Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. I'm Jason Barnard, the brand SERP guy from Kalicube, and I'm talking to Philippe VanDusen, or Dusen, depending on how we say it.
VanDusen.
Which do you prefer?
VanDusen's fine.
Brilliant. We're going to talk about building a powerful personal brand with content. And I personally love personal branding. I think there's a huge future for brand marketers and marketers in general helping people with their personal branding. And I really want to know how we can use content to build that and make sense of our personal branding without losing track of who we are at our foundation. Before we do that, the quick song. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Philippe VanDusen.
Thank you very much, Jason. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely delightful. I love the green glasses, which go almost perfectly with the green that we've chosen for this episode.
The green is chartreuse and is actually my brand color. So it is me repping my brand.
Right. So do you find that wearing the green glasses every single time makes a difference?
Absolutely. And it's really funny because I just started doing it this year. And there was we did some user research of my email list, and one of the questions was, how did you come across Phil? How do you recognize Philip? And they were saying, oh, the guy with the green glasses. And so that's usually people who have only found me or been added to my list in the last year or so. But it was really interesting to hear such a loud kind of chorus of people who had locked that into their head. And there's an aspect of personal style branding, which is very important that very few people think about it. Like Steve Jobs thought about it, wore the, mock black turtleneck every time he presented a new computer. I actually wore a black t-shirt for my first, I want to say 250 videos. And that really cemented that in people's heads as well. And as a branding and design guy, I know that color is apart from smell is the most indelible human sense. The next one is in terms of recognition and emotional response is color. And so leveraging color in your branding and your personal brand can be really sticky in terms of people recognizing you quickly and having that recall of having seen you before or later recalling you as a brand.
Right, 100%. I mean, the red shirt really nails it. I've been wearing this for 8 years now, red every single time. And I will literally change my shirt 2 minutes before I come on screen.
Yeah, I get it. And that's good. That's very smart. It's very smart.
It's really difficult to do because the consistency of saying, I'm now in a professional environment, I need to change the shirt. And I need to think about that ahead of time is very difficult to do.
Well, Jason, let me tell you, I made a very, very difficult decision just recently, and you will see in most of my personal branding and photography is that I have a Van Dyke and a handlebar mustache, and I appeared that way in my last 450 videos, and really, literally, in the last 2 months, I lost. Oh, you're back.
Sorry, no, I was checking it because I had your brand SERP and the handlebar mustache isn't there.
Yes, because I just updated wait. Yes, it is. Yeah. I have a handlebar mustache in literally every photo of me on the net at the moment. And so I have just gone clean shaven with a bit of a soul patch for the first time in 7 years as a birthday gift to my wife who hates my mustache. And so very early on, I decided that I was going to adopt a kind of a personal branding element in my facial hair and sported a kind of, a graying handlebar mustache for a long time. And that's another kind of personal branding element that was very difficult for me to give up. I don't know if it's gone forever. but just shaving it off and showing up in lives and doing interviews like this and new videos makes me very nervous, because I've kind of shaved off a recognition piece of
Right.
my personal brand.
But
But
that's a
I did
really
it
interesting
consistent.
point. Sorry, it's a really interesting point, because I looked at your brand SERP and the screen is quite small. My glasses aren't very good. And I had an operation last year and it didn't go very well. So my eyesight is terrible. So I couldn't literally see the handlebar mustache, but I can see the green glasses. And as you say, color has much more effect than something as simple as a handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
So I goofed, and I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. And I'm hopefully more people will have challenging eyesight and then they won't notice.
No, like the green glasses absolutely take away from most of the other facial aspects. So the difference between you with the green glasses and you without the green glasses and the mustache with the beard, for me, is quite small, because I'm focusing so much on those glasses.
There you go. So if you can change one thing, but if you keep other things consistent, then it's not as jarring. So, and that's in any kind of branding, in visual branding with brand
Right.
identity. When companies change their logo, very often they will keep the basic format of their logo, but they might change the font, or they might change, the icon, but then they'll keep the font the same, the word mark the same, or they'll make sure to keep the color the same. They very rarely change something so dramatically that everything changes at once, because essentially what you're doing is you're throwing away visual brand recognition equity. And that is a cardinal sin in the branding world, which is why if you search evolution of the Coca-Cola logo or evolution of the Pepsi logo, you can see a logo, evolve over time, over the last 100 years in step changed iterations. And that's a very conscious decision, particularly with brands that are consumer facing brands like CPG brands, who rely on shelf recognition for someone to pick it up and buy it.
Oh, sorry, you just said CPG. Can you tell me what CPG stands
CPG
for?
is consumer packaged goods.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I would immediately have thought about Google, because of the way the logo has evolved. It's kept the same colors, but it changes, the font. And now I look at the old font and it seems so old school, but the font itself isn't old school, I don't think. It's my perception of where I was when I first saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's like when we look back on pictures of ourselves in the 70s and the clothes that were the 80s, or however old you are, even the 2000s, and you look at the styles that you're wearing, you don't think of them as being ridiculous at the time, but everything changes in hindsight and we all evolve, right?
Brilliant. Okay, before we get started, and we're going to talk about build a powerful personal brand with content. We've already talked about the visual aspect of it. We're going to talk about content. We'll look at your brand SERP really quickly. Philip VanDusen, or Dusen, internet personality. What do you think of that?
Well, I just signed up for, to claim my domain, I guess, my name, with Google just recently, actually in response to being invited on your show. And I offered up all my websites and my social to prove that I owned all of these, kind of platforms. And so this iteration of my Google search results has changed really in the last couple of weeks. And I am very surprised, actually, that number one, they didn't capitalize the D in my last name. I'm a little upset about that. You're going to have to tell me how to get them to fix that. And number two, I never classified myself as an internet personality. If anything, I would call myself a branding expert or branding and design expert. So I don't know where they got internet personality. I certainly didn't put that down on my application.
Well, that's a really interesting question. There are two interesting questions there for me. Number one is the capitalization in the middle of a word, or the non-capitalization at the beginning of a word, like EasyJet or eBay. It's hugely difficult to get Google to understand that, because capitalization is proper nouns. So naturally speaking, your name should be written VanDusen without the capital D, because it's one single word. And if you separated them, it would become two. That would be a proper noun. Google would be happy. It's grammatical rules that are breaking the things here.
Yeah, so they're upsetting a lot of Dutch people. That's all I would say.
Yes. 100%. And the second is the representation of you as an internet personality. Why is Google doing that? It's because it doesn't recognize how you've described yourself.
Which is very bizarre, because absolutely everywhere I show up, including, YouTube and the categories that I'm in, and literally every single of the 450 videos I've posted are all about branding, design, and brand strategy. And it's all across my website. It's in every about section about me. It's in my bio section on my website. It all talks about me as a branding and design expert. So the fact that their SEO can't parse that is super surprising to me.
Right. And I mean, I haven't examined this in detail, but Google looks for semantic triples, which is subject, verb, object. And when I look at this result, we have Philip VanDusen has over 25 years of experience in brand, and there's a big separation between the subject and the object with no real verb in between. Philip VanDusen is the owner of Weerhaal Brand Design, blah, 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 blah. That says that you're the owner of a company. So Google is looking at that. It's looking for the semantic triples. It's looking for the simple semantic triples. It can't make sense. There's contradiction in its mind, and it's made up what it thinks is the best solution. So you're right. You're describing yourself to human beings in an incredibly systematic and consistent manner, but Google isn't looking at it from that perspective. It's looking at semantic triples. That's a topic for another day. And what I love is that you should have this. You should definitely have this with the content you have and your personal branding, with the knowledge panel cards, information about you. And what I love about this is you don't need to be famous. You don't need to be an internet personality. It's something anybody can do. All Google wants to do is represent you to your audience with the content you've created that's helpful, valuable, and useful to that audience. So I think this conversation is going to be hugely interesting. We're already 12 minutes in, and we haven't got to what you're going to teach me. So we're going to get to that now. What can you teach me about content for my personal brand so that I can improve this?
Sure.
And that I can hopefully help you to improve that.
Sure. Well, when I started, I spent 25 plus years as a senior creative executive in both the branding agency side, global agencies, some of the largest agencies in the world, and also in the global corporation side. So I've worked both sides of that street, agencies and kind of client side, as we call it in the industry. I was a senior executive at PepsiCo, at Old Navy for a number of years. So fashion industry, consumer packaged goods, CPG industry. And when I decided to step away from that and start my own thing, I went from, having a established identity through through essentially a business card and a really nice title with a company name behind it, to nothing. And so I decided at that point that I was going to start a branding consultancy, and it was going to be me, and I was going to bring in systematically partners to work projects. It was going to be a virtual agency sort of paradigm, which is the way the agency business is kind of changing. That's the rise of the consultant economy. And I was really kind of accepting and riding that wave. And so when I went out on my own, I realized, I have about a 3-page black and white website that I've paid no attention to for the last 25 years because I haven't had to. And so I needed to build, I've been building other people's brands for 25 years, but I had spent zero time building my own. And so I was starting from scratch at a very ripe old age and needing to build my personal brand so I could be found, recognized, considered as an expert in what I was doing, and that my new client prospects would find me, trust me, and want me to work with them. The big difference is that I had spent most of my career working with the Fortune 100, and I didn't want to work with the Fortune 100 anymore. I've kind of been there, done that. I really wanted to work with startups and entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and small to medium-sized businesses. So I, became a student of the internet basically and personal branding. And so I realized that content marketing was really exploding, and I was perfectly situated to do that because I had a lot of experience that I could share
Mhm.
to businesses. And so first of all, I started a newsletter and to build an email list because I knew that was important. And so I started a newsletter. I published it every 2 weeks for 6 months. And then when I kind of got that under my belt and was building my email list, I realized that I wanted to start something that was a little more substantive in terms of content. So it was kind of between a podcast and a YouTube channel, right?
Mm.
And so I had to make that choice. And as a visual person, as a visual branding person, it didn't make much sense in terms of how I was considering it to go with a podcast because that's purely audio. You can't see what people are talking about. And I thought YouTube would be perfect because if I want to show things, I can, and people can see it. And number two is that I can take my audio from my YouTube channel and repurpose it as a podcast, but I can't go the other way. I can't do a podcast and repurpose it as a YouTube channel. So I started a YouTube channel, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to post a video a week for a year, for 52 weeks.
Ooh, sorry, just to interrupt there, I've heard two things there. Number one is I had an email list and emailed every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Then I had a YouTube channel come podcast every week. It's consistency and making a promise to yourself and keeping it.
Yes. And I just actually wrote a newsletter about that. And there's an intention, there are goals, there are plans, and then there are commitments. And when I started both my newsletter and my YouTube channel, I made a commitment to myself. I said, I am going to do this at this frequency for this period of time before I ever revisit that commitment. Because I knew from my studies that that content marketing is all about consistency. You can't do it haphazardly. You have to show up consistently over time for it to have effect. And so I made that commitment to myself that I'm going to show up, do a video a week for a year, and then I'll make a decision whether I want to go forward or not. And that was probably, in retrospect, the absolute smartest thing that I did in my professional independent career, was because so many people will post a video, 2 videos, 5, 10 videos. And then when they get no views and have no subscribers, they get disheartened. They say, this isn't working for me, and they give up. And you can't do that. You essentially have to show up to an empty room and sing your heart out for a long period of time before the audience starts filtering in.
Right. So we're looking at commitment, consistency, and determination as a lovely triplet. If you don't have that, don't start. If you haven't done the full year or 6 months or whatever you commit to, don't make a judgment on the achievements that you've made. But you talk about brand strategy, brand design, communication, building authority, and community. So those are the 4 things. Is it in that order? And how do you build the 4?
Yeah, you have to have a strategy. First of all, you have to know what your value is, what you're bringing to the table, who you're helping. What is that value? Why you're better, why you're different. You start with that. Like, what is it that I have? Number 2 is you have to find a, and I have a free giveaway for your listeners that actually can give you the URL at the end of the show for a free download. Right. There's a proprietary tool that I've developed called a personal brand wheel, which is essentially, it's a planning tool, but it's also an evaluation tool. And the kind of second,
and we'll share that in the description for anybody.
Okay. All right, great. And then you essentially have to build your real estate. And so your real estate is going to be your website, your social media channels, wherever it is that you choose to show up.
Yeah.
Kind of the third quadrant is your content. You're going to actually start putting stuff out into the world. And then the fourth is engagement. And that is, putting the content out and engaging actually has to happen simultaneously. But there is that kind of follow-up engagement, building an audience, really engaging with that audience, and having it become a community and a conversation. And then you have to track it. You have to go back and look at your successes, where you've gotten traction, where you haven't. You have to leverage your successes and sunset your losses, because a lot of people will start doing content, but they won't pay attention to the metrics. They won't pay attention to the sorts of content which are getting traction, or the sorts of topics that people are responding to, and the ones that they aren't. And you have to evolve your content offering and what it is you're saying, how you're engaging over time. Because everyone starts just like brands or companies. You start with a hypothesis. This is what I think people are going to like. This is what I think people want. And when you start delivering it to the market, very often you get feedback. Oh, I do like that, or I don't like that. And companies evolve and change, products evolve and change. And you have to do that as a personal brand too.
Right. Sorry, which brings me to a question. And you saw that I had a question. Very subtle of you to see me going, ooh, ooh, ooh. It's that you have the idea, you have the hypothesis, you think this is the audience I need to reach, you commit to your 52 weeks of one video a week. That doesn't mean to say you stick to your initial plan through the 52 weeks. It means you're going to go through the 52 weeks, come what may. And over the 52 weeks, I will adapt to the metrics that I see as they come in. Is that approximately correct?
That's absolutely correct. One of the things I did for the first 2 years, 3 years of my YouTube channel is I read and answered every single comment that I got. And this got into the tens of thousands of comments until it got to the point where I could not keep up. And in doing that, number one, people were shocked that the author of the video was actually getting back to them and giving them a thoughtful reply. And number two, I was really closely paying attention to what people were responding to, what they found attractive, what they didn't, what they got value out of, what they didn't, where I got flamed, where people said, this is stupid. And I adjusted my content as I went along. And it was very helpful because I paid attention to what got traction, and I sunsetted the stuff that didn't.
Right. And the idea of community, is that all about saying subscribe now, like, follow, whatever it would be? Or is it more subtle than that? Because I find that quite heavy-handed. Yeah.
Number one, in social media, people won't do anything unless you ask them to. It's like a
so that's just me being old and and
right. And you have to do it. You have to ask them, because otherwise it's TikTok, right? They're on to the next thing. They're scrolling, they're gone. And so if you catch them in the middle of the video or the end of the video and say, hey, you like this video? Just hit subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Unless you do that, they're already getting recommendations in the next video to watch, and they're clicking on it and they're gone.
Okay.
So you have to ask. And it's just like pop-ups on a website. You have to break the stare and ask them to do something. Because otherwise they won't.
Which is a huge point, is asking people to do something or suggesting what the next step might be with you in their journey with you is hugely important. And I'm English, so I feel a little bit reticent about that. It feels rude.
Yeah, get over yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
That's all I can say. It's like if you said, I don't like TV commercials, so I don't really want to advertise on TV. I mean, in the old days when it was radio, TV, and outdoor, right? The old marketing days. You can't just say, I don't like radio ads. They interrupt my drive time. And then when you get into business, you go, okay, you got to advertise on radio. I kind of you have to understand that that's what you do in order to get business.
No, lovely. I mean, I'm absolutely happy with get over myself, because you're right. And then the question is, once I've got them into my community with a subscribe or a comment, how do I maintain the traction with the audience in terms of my own personal brand?
Rephrase that question. I don't want to give a long answer going down the wrong path.
Right. Well, we're looking at my personal brand, which is saying I want the community to be close to me. So how do I avoid going off on thousands of different tracks that aren't necessarily helpful to my personal brand?
What you just said is what you have to turn on its head, which is you said, I want to get my community to be close to me. What you want to do is you actually want to be of service to your community. So how can I be of better service to my community? And you do that by delivering value, consistently over time with no expectation of return. Because there is a thing that develops, and this is really key, Jason. I want you to listen to this, to hear this. There's something that I have coined, a phrase I've called subliminal reciprocity, which is if you give someone enough value over time, they want to do something for you. They want to help you out. They want to pay you back. They want to thank you. And in a way, when you deliver great content to people, they build a level of trust in you and this subliminal reciprocity. And that's how you eventually will get clients from what it is that you do, if that's the sort of content that you're putting out in the world. I mean, there are people who put content out that's purely entertaining, TikTok, right? Dancing about whatever. And there's people who do content that is more business focused, which is, kind of more my lane.
And one of those things is the idea of the reciprocity. You have to be hugely patient because it takes so much time. You have to give so much value, and you have to give value in the right place to the right people. Are we looking at a year? Are we looking at 2 years?
Depends on the platform. There are platforms that you can get traction fairly quickly there, but content is a long game. I'm not going to kid you about that. Content marketing is a long game. But here's the thing about content marketing. Content marketing has the longest tail of any kind of marketing, because you can build up a library of content, and that content will perform for you year after year after year, long after you have posted it. And I have a perfect example of my own brand in that regard in a particular video that I did that I'll share with you in terms of like a little case study story about SERP, which is, and because it takes a long time to get that library up there, but it will work for you forever afterwards. Content marketing is attraction marketing. You're putting something out there that are drawing people to you.
Yeah.
And then there's advertising, which is promotion, which is you're putting a message in front of people and you're asking them to do something right away. And you have to pay for that because you are forcefully putting your message out in front of people.
Right.
When you do content, you're not. You're posting content and drawing people in to say, I have something of value for you for free. Come read it. You're going to get something out of it. It's not like here's my message, buy my thing. It's a very different paradigm, and they operate very differently.
No, which a lovely distinction, and that idea of content that is long-serving and content that is generous, content that helps, is a long-term game, and it does truly work. Now, the question with a personal brand, as we come towards the end of the show, is this, and I really wanted to know from a brand SERP perspective, i.e. what appears on Google or Bing when you search my name or your name, Philippe VanDusen, which types of content are going to help me the most?
The type of content, and this is where my story can come in. Within a year, that first 52 weeks of posting videos on YouTube, I was getting 80% of my clients directly from YouTube. They would contact me on my website where I was driving them to, and they would say, saw a YouTube video, liked how you think, I liked what you were saying in X video, I want to do business with you. And so all of that heavy lifting of proving my knowledge and my expertise was already done for me by the content that I put out. And when they got to me, they'd already seen me, heard me, knew they liked my personality, and knew that I knew what I was talking about. So most of that work had already been done. And that was done through video. Google owns YouTube. Google is the largest search engine in the world. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. And so video, in my opinion, is the number one form of content that a brand, an individual can use to elevate them in search. Because when you search a person's name or a subject, what pops up is their name, their website, and then immediately Google always has like a series of 3 videos on the topic underneath it. And those videos can very well be you. And so it's kind of a double hit. You're basically double loading the search engine world by doing video and also having a website and doing other content on your website or your blog. Now, the little quick story I wanted to tell you was that I did a video very early on within the first 52 videos called What Does a Creative Director Do? And it was fairly popular, and it was actually kind of nested on a number of other websites, and it ended up getting, I don't know, 150,000 views, right? And within 3 or 4 months of that video being up, when you search the word creative director on Google and you went to Google Images, this is the weird thing. You went to Google Images, search creative director. The thumbnail from my video, what does a creative director do, was the #1 result, followed by about 50 photos of very famous creative directors.
Right.
And even now, when you search creative director, very often, and this is 5.5 years later, my What Does a Creative Director Do video will be in the top 3 or 4 results. That is the long tail that I'm talking about. This is a video that I posted 5 years ago, and it is still driving traffic to both my website and to my credibility as a creative leader.
Right. That's a brilliant story and a really great conclusion. And one thing is, I'll bet that thumbnail has great design.
Well, it was in my first 50 videos, so it doesn't have really great design. And but the thing is, and I could change the thumbnail if I wanted to. I could update it, but got too much going on. But you know, the reasoning behind it is what is the most important, which is that if you're building a personal brand, video is definitely the #1 way to go. Podcasting is probably second, followed by written content, because writing is the easiest and there's more of it, so it's harder to rank for that. But you don't have to actually have a podcast, and this is something for your viewers or listeners. You can also appear on other people's podcasts. So if you put your acting gear and pitch yourself to other podcasts in your category of business, you can appear as a guest on people's podcasts, and that can also expose you to much larger audiences because you're leveraging the audiences of others to get exposure. And then over time, as you get more comfortable with that, you could start your own podcast. That's
Brilliant.
what I would recommend.
That's great advice. How lovely. Thank you so much, Philip. That was absolutely delightful, hugely informative. I love the green glasses. Better than my red shirt, maybe.
No, not at all.
Well, I noticed it more, but I think I've got used to the red shirt and I don't see it anymore. But
you got to get some red glasses.
Yes. Oh, good point.
Yes.
We have Mariana Franco talking about coping with marketing with a wonderful, wonderful red dress. And she said that she took that photo 5 years ago. So she wasn't using the red dress to match my red shirt, but it matches absolutely perfectly. This is great branding. She's a great brander. She's a great marketer, and she's going to be talking about coping with marketing. And I'm truly looking forward to that. Could you pass the virtual baton, Philip?
Actually, definitely. Here's the baton. Oh, wait, here's the baton, Mariana. Get out there and build your personal brand.
Brilliant. Thank you. And that's actually what she's in the process of doing. So I'm sure she'll watch this one and then follow it up with some astonishing insights into, as I said, coping with marketing, which I love as a title because it's so generic, so general, but it's a problem we all have. Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you, everyone, for watching. That was absolutely awesome. You get the outro song too. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate being on your show.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you. Kalicube. It's all about your brand SERP.